Mumbai, the financial and commercial capital of India, the city where property prices feature amongst the world's most expensive real estate. Also the city which is the global investing community's very first window view of India. And a city which finds itself stacked against the likes of Shanghai, Kuala Lumpur, London and even New York. This city finds itself today standing at crossroads. Real estate is booming in parts, but very few parts. Rest of Mumbai, whether it's new development or redevelopment or slum redevelopment, has challenges which it can very well live without. Today on the show, the good, the bad, the ugly of Mumbai's real estate market to understand what's at play here. What's happening to infrastructure? What's happening to policy? Where is it going on prices and new launches? All of that over the next 60 minutes with my esteemed panel today. Let's welcome Pranay Vakil, Chairman, Praron Consultancy. Pranay, thank you very much. And of course, ex-Chairman Knight Frank, legend in the real estate industry by himself. Srinivasan, Chief Executive Officer, Kotak Realty Fund. And of course, Srini will tell us how much he's investing in the Mumbai real estate market vis-a-vis the rest of India. Also with us, Kalpesh Mehta, partner, the buyer company, and partner Tribeca. Kalpesh, thanks very much for making the time. And we also have with us, for a developer perspective, Srinivasan Gopalan, Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer of the Vadhva Group, a hardcore Mumbai development company.
Very much.
Armed with data, as always, Sameer Jasuja, founder and CEO of Prop Equity, who will get us to the basics of the numbers of what's happening, whether it's a market which is doing well in parts or overall there's a big slump in the Mumbai market. So let's, I'm not going to read out any facts and figures. Let's just get your view. Pranay Vakil, curious crossroads. That's the word that I use because I'm not able to figure out what's happening in Mumbai, because from the time a year ago when I started the property show to now, I can see that data which Sameer has taught me to read as a scary data, inventory overhang, going up from 12 months to 18 months to 24 months and now in some markets crossing over to 28 or 29 months. Is that a sign that there's a slump?
Well, in one word, if I was to summarize, everyone is confused.
Okay.
All stakeholders are confused. The buyer is confused because he reads in the paper the prices are going to come down. When he goes to buy, he finds the prices have not come down. You look at a lender, he's confused because they lend money to people on the basis that a certain project will come up in a certain time, and it doesn't.
Right.
So they have a time limit because they're all close-ended funds and they are confused. The government is confused because no amount of reduction in the interest rate, is really pepping up the market, And the developer is confused because all the time the DC regulations are changing. He doesn't know how to adjust to the new DC regulations. Wow. So I think all of it requires a relook. All of it requires some kind of a stability, some kind of consistency, some permanency in the whole thing, so that there is that confidence which comes back into the market and revives. So it's not pricing alone.
All right. So is there a bit of a crisis of confidence, Kalpesh? Would you say that, or is that too harsh a term to use? We'll stick with confusion.
Confusion is a very, very good term to start with, right? This is a market it's a strange, unpredictable animal, and I would say most industry insiders have been wrong about this market for 5 years, 10 years, and still continue to be wrong about the market. But one thing I feel very strongly about is that there is no lack of fundamental demand in this market. The demand story in the Mumbai real estate market is strong, and it is going to continue to remain strong for a very, very long time to come. Socioeconomic changes, wealth creation, they're all driving demand, and they're going to continue to drive demand. What's happening is, on the pricing side, I think pricing might have moved a little ahead of itself, and which is why you're seeing people on the fence. It's not that people do not want to buy. It's not that people do not have money to buy. People are not sure where pricing is going, and they're not buying.
So that confusion has been there pretty much for the last year as a whole, and continues this year.
Correct. But if you look at some specific examples of recent launches that have happened over the last 6 to 12 months, a very reputed developer in central Bombay cleaned up 6,000 crores worth of product in 2 weeks. Okay, this was a luxury product. It was priced very well. ticket size was right. The pricing was clear, which means there was no negotiation. I think that's a big point. And you sold 6,000 crores of the product in 2 weeks. We recently launched a project that was priced well, pricing was clear. We sold 15% of our inventory in 1 month. So I think to the extent you can price something well, and all your permissions are in place, and you're a reputed guy, I don't think there's an issue. There's no demand issue. I think it's potentially a pricing issue and a lack of clarity issue.
But when it comes to pricing issue, I hear developers saying that, look, the reason why we can't bring prices down, and prices have run up, whether you look at the NHB data or you just look at prop equity data, Knight Frank data, the rapid rise in prices over the last 5 years have probably left consumers fairly breathless, Srini. So what happens? I mean, how do you get the pricing right in this current environment?
I think it's important to know what are the components of this pricing, right? We as developers, we operate only in Mumbai, and first of all, there is scarcity of land in Mumbai. So the landowner has become much more intelligent than what he was maybe 5 years back. So what he does is he
I think being polite, is it more intelligent or more greedy?
I would use politically correct words as intelligent.
Because you need to do your next joint venture and of course get the land.
I think what the landowners have also done is fairly correct, because earlier the developers used to be greedy. Okay. Sorry,
only earlier.
I seriously say it was earlier.
Not fair. I think we're all cornering him and confuse the two developers here today.
I would say that earlier they were greedy. Today they are talking about being very fair, to be very honest.
Okay.
Just look at this. There is a sales price which the landowner underwrites, okay, not the developer. He says you will sell it at X price point, and he works backwards and puts all the cost of construction at today's price point and arrives at a residual value, saying that this is the price of my land. And there are 40 developers bidding for that land. The choice that the developer has is either he does not have work, or he goes and jumps into this project and takes a chance that I'm going to finish it in 3 years. So that's the first part. You have entered the land, and no land is available less than 800,000 crores as of today. Okay, Srini can vouch for that. If you are in a place like Mumbai, 800,000 crores. Then there is this new animal called environment, which suddenly has become so big.
I've been hearing about that very often.
And you wait for 1 year just to get there. Okay. Now say as a typical developer, there is 40% that you put, 60% you borrow. So the borrowed fund is like say 16 to 17%, and your own cost of equity is say 22 to 23%. So there is a leakage when you start off, even before you even till the land, there is a leakage of 150 to 200 crores there, right? So having said that, that's gone. Then as Pranay rightly said, the DC rules change every day. There is something called fungible which comes up after you have taken the plot, and there is a 40-50 crores erosion directly. Right? I'm not against fungible. In fact, I am a clear supporter of whatever has been done. But I'm saying from a profitability perspective, the risk that is there in today's market is huge. There is uncertainty of permissions. You don't know when you will really get that, whether you will get that. Okay, and that has caused the break in confidence amongst the final customers, because they don't know the structure, whether it will be up, when will it be
so it's
up.
Not just pricing. I think it's also a question of when are they going to get there.
I don't think it's pricing at all. I don't think it's pricing at all. To be very honest, we have done some launches and it has done beautifully well. And our pricings have always been very reasonable in the sense for the product that we deliver. And they have, because of the brand that we enjoy, we get some premium on that. So we have never, I don't think we have lost a deal because of price.
So Srini, I'm hearing these two contradictory things. I'm saying if the pricing is right, my product will sell, right? Getting the pricing right itself is a big challenge, and that's where the risks are really large. Is that why your last two deals have been away from Mumbai and concentrated closer to NCR?
Well, I think, when you look at the comments that all three of them have made, the thing that really stands out is the uncertainty, and institutional investors don't like uncertainty. And
I thought you are a homegrown institutional investor. In India,
so
you
just imagine.
should by now be used to uncertainty.
You're absolutely
this is
right.
India.
You're absolutely right.
You're
Just
talking
imagine.
like a Gora, Srini.
No, I completely agree. Just imagine, even if I feel that way, imagine what the Goras would be feeling. So think about it. You know, there is no clarity. You know, Mumbai market from a regulatory approval perspective, relative to, let's say, Delhi or Noida, Gurgaon, is a minefield. It's very difficult. There are multiple regulatory authorities. There are different pockets of Mumbai which fall under different municipal corporations or regulatory authorities, and everything is like in their own fancy.
So are you saying
bodies like Oshiwara has its own planning authority, then you have MADA. How many guys do you deal with? And then you have the central government who comes up with a funny fiat that if your road width is not so many meters, you cannot build more than X square feet. Now this is something that somebody in the central government has thought about it without thinking about Mumbai as a city at all. And if the developer goes and asks the central government is saying, oh, it's only advisory, it's not binding. The state says, well, it's come from the central government. Until they give me something in writing, I'm not going to act upon it. So this ding-dong has been going on for 1 year. It is a joke. So how do you really do business when the multiple arms of the state government doesn't know what they're doing? The central government is, stirring the pot further, and there is no visibility. Consequently, what you're seeing is that there is going to be a fair degree of lack of supply. I think part of the reason why some of these gentlemen on this table have been able to successfully launch their projects is that they have done the hard work, got most of the approvals, and once you sort of got there, as long as you price the product right, I think there is demand. I completely agree with him that if there is a product at the right price, it will sell overnight.
It will sell overnight. So there's a lot of pent-up demand. Actually, I'm going to stick to that point that you mentioned, and this is a crucial one, which prop equity data also talks about. Over to you, Samir. Mumbai new launch supply from 2011 to 2012 goes down 40%. We discussed this a little bit last week, but then I want you to dissect this data a little bit more for me here. Navi Mumbai minus 15%, Thane minus 11%. Overall, MMR is down 18.6, almost 19% in new launch supply. Total absorption figures are looking even more worrisome. Absorption is down even further. So I would say that even though supply has gone down, absorption has fallen even more, which means pricing, in maybe not with him and not with Kalpesh, but several projects is out of sync with what the consumer thinks is the right value for the product.
As one of the people said over here that Mumbai is a very strange animal and nobody understands it at all, and I completely agree with you, because the data in itself is it doesn't really answer many of the questions. For example, we are talking about here that Kalpesh said that a developer launched a product and sold 6,000 crores worth of real estate in less than 2 months' time. But what the data really shows me from 2010 to 2012 is that there were 130,000 units that were launched in Navi Mumbai, Thane and Mumbai, and in 2012 there were only about 79,000 units that were launched. The inventory overhang figures in 2010 were about 12 months, and in today's day they've reached 25-26 months. Pricing has gone up through the roof. So why has actually absorption come down when there is so much demand? This is something that I clearly cannot understand. So the only reason that I can put to why demand is coming down is that pricing has gone through the roof. It used to be 10,000 rupees a square feet on a weighted average price Mumbai in as early as 2010, but today it's gone up to as high as 16,000 rupees a square feet, and that clearly demonstrates why the absorption levels are dropping every month.
Okay, fair enough. And I think that's exactly what I wanted to understand, that I see new launch supply has come down, but absorption has fallen more than the new launches. So Kalpesh, outprice, and the market, maybe a few projects like yours and yours have got sold and are right price, but overall data isn't looking very good and isn't giving the consumer any comfort.
So I think it's very hard to make sense of the data, as we've all said, but here's a few thoughts that might get you towards understanding it a bit more. If you look at pricing on finished products, right, products that are delivered, the price increases there have been the largest of any other segment. Then you look at projects that are near completion, near delivery. So when you see price increases there, they're very, very high. Then you see projects that are launched, that are fully approved. I think those projects have done well. So I think what this data is also telling you is that part of the reason why new launches have gone down is because approvals have been very slow in coming, which has led to developers just shelving their project. Because what's happening now is the discount between something that's built and something that's approved versus something that's not approved and launched is very, very high. So developers in the past would launch their projects without approvals in place, but now they're deciding to launch them a little later. And given that, for a year when the DC regulations were in flux, nothing new was launched, I think some of that is impacting your data as well.
Pranay, do you think that almost 2 years stalemate in Mumbai's market, and we've heard this over and over again, ultimately it's the consumer who's ending up paying the price for it?
That's right. I would agree with Kalpesh, but only partly. The reason is that the recent past of 2 years that we are talking about is not representative. Yes, the supply was choked. 3,000 projects were asked to resubmit their plans. What would they do?
What would they do? Absolutely.
Right. Now, when you choke the supply in this fashion, the prices that you see at the end of the tunnel, right, is not representative of what it should be. Srini talked about approvals. Let me tell you that if the approvals are in place and are predictable, the prices could be 20% lower than what they are today.
My goodness.
This is the kind of risk factor that they build into the price. All the uncertainties put together, the developer wants 20% more in his price. So, if you had a smooth system of approval, right, where you are able to really predict how much you can build, when you can build, do we have to go for environmental or not, all of those things are known, then your price can be 20% lower.
All right, so on that thought, we're going to take a very quick break. I'm going to come back and ask my panel, are they getting any comfort from policymakers, because they are dealing with them on a daily basis, from the state government, also at the center government, on environmental clearances, of things changing? Because if things are not going to change, you and I will continue to have to battle very high prices. And how long will we sit on the fence? We'll have to sometime bite the bullet and buy that expensive product. We'll also be back to look at another crying need for unlocking real estate value in a city like Mumbai. That slum, 6,000 acres, that's the figure, and that's the one I got from Kalpesh, is actually locked up in slums of Mumbai. It doesn't look good. The city doesn't look good because of the slums. People who live in the slums don't get a good living. And of course, real estate value continues to be very high because you're not unlocking all that land. We'll be back in just a moment. Mumbai's curious real estate market, which, as my panel has just told me, is standing very confused at this moment. And a very important point which has been made: why has Mumbai's real estate market run up so much? Land, of course, is scarce and therefore getting more and more expensive. But more than that, delays in approvals actually cost as much, or add to the cost of a project, of an apartment, as much as 20%. So let's dwell on that just a little bit more. 20%, Srini, do you really believe that's the additional cost of approval delays?
I think one is the fact that approval delays and lack of land, which constrains the developers from expanding his business, is a very key reason why prices are where they are. I think the other key reason is that the government is not doing its job. And let's look at, you look at a city like NCR. You have a product in NCR where if somebody wants to buy a product at 3,000 rupees a square foot, which is well connected, that product is available. Somebody wants a product which is 100,000 rupees a square foot, well connected, that is available. And you take a city like Mumbai, it's a linear city. You run an arc from the east side, where somewhere in Thane, and then run that road right away onto the western side, which is Virar. What's the price? 10,000 rupees a square foot. There is nothing in a civilized location which is below 10,000 rupees a square foot in a city like Mumbai. And the reason why it's available is, if you look at the model around NCR, there are two different models. The Gurgaon or Haryana government has been able to bring more land under a master planned area. They brought nearly 6,000 hectares of land. In the last 7 years, we have seen Master Plan 2021 and now we are seeing Master Plan 2031. The government is doing its job in ensuring that supply comes. Private developers then go and develop it and provide the product supply. In Noida, the government acquired the land and gave it to private developers. You can choose whatever model you are. Here we are sitting in Mumbai talking this comparison of Shanghai, which is a joke, where the government can't even come up with the next master plan notification where suggestion objection has already been done. Where is the master plan? Where is the land supply? So this is not the way to govern the city. And the problem with the city is that the city is run by politicians who don't get elected from Mumbai. They have no stake in the city. And I'm sorry to say, despite the most powerful industrialists sitting in this city, they don't do much for the city.
Okay.
If they can get things done, and they can get things done in the government of this country, why can't they fix the city?
The most powerful industrialist doesn't have that much stake in Mumbai.
Maybe.
Let's also come to the reality. But it's a well pointed out fact. I mean, in fact, the country's top 10 by market cap are in Mumbai. The head offices are in Mumbai. Tell me something. Why is it? Yes, but though there are murmurs that it could likely lose its status very soon to Gurgaon. Having said that, the policy makers that's on another day. Yeah. But policy makers' apathy, that's something that you deal with on a daily basis. Are you seeing any kind of change, or do you think this entire potpourri which is between and the interfighting between the Shiv Sena, the BJP, the Congress, especially when it comes to slum redevelopment, which we're going to touch upon very quickly, is going to just continue to be there for another, let's say, 5 to 10 years? You don't see the end of the,
Your
darkness?
Thing is, you asked me whether there is a change. There's definitely a change, but towards the worse. Today, 80% of a developer's time goes only waiting outside some office, waiting for some permission or the other. So that's where the entire time goes. So where are we going to put in our creativity to create a Shanghai? Having said that, look, I would like to give a few examples of some of the schemes where the decision has been pending for I don't know how many years. 33-5 MADA redevelopment.
Right.
Okay. Now, initially there was this proposal where we could pay some premium and then we get our free FSI. That got changed and to saying that you have to hand over 65% of the free space area back to MADA. There are at least 3,000 projects which are stuck because the developer has bought the land assuming that there is going to be a premium that needs to be paid, and this model is just not viable. So I don't know whether the government really wants to redevelop that place at all.
Right.
For 2 years, this thing has been waiting. I don't know for whose nod. The second thing I would like to bring to light is the car park scheme. In our own case, we applied it. When we applied and there was a change in the rule, we were asked to resubmit. We resubmitted. It went through some 4 or 5 officers and now it is waiting for the nod of the UD. I don't understand if the law is very specific. It says that there are 4 floors that you can go. There is so much of construction that you need to do. Then why do we have to go back again and again to UD?
Yeah.
Can there not be a very clear-cut policy saying that these are the 10 rules? We are okay to live with that. These are the 10 rules. You cannot violate those 10. And if you do these 10, then here is the permission for you.
Okay.
So there is a lot of
single window policy.
So there's no single window policy which has...
Every time the developer has to keep running back.
You will be surprised to note that 2 different government bodies do not talk to each other. Yeah. There is one environment which has a certain rule and there is a CFO NOC which contradicts the environment rule. True. So we really don't know how to make the plan. So now coming back to what Pranay said is 20%. 20% is small. Okay. You lose much more than 20%, and first thing is you're not certain. You wouldn't
bring down the prices to more than 20% if the approvals did come in.
No, you never know. If my project between 3 to 5 years, you lose 40% of what is the holding cost, Srini? You know what is the cost that is going on. you lose at least 20% on the cost of land per annum, and land constitutes 70% of your total cost.
Okay, so now I'm hearing a lot of despair. We'll come to the slum redevelopment bit a little bit later. Sameer, I'm hearing a lot of despair, but I do see some markets which have actually not done too badly within the Mumbai region as well. So how do you actually, let's say from an investment, that we've done the end user bit, it seems that, well, till policy changes, and God knows when that will happen, because as we've just heard, things are getting worse on the policy front, on the clearance front for the Mumbai developers. Let's just look at now the demand factor. There is demand, there's pent up demand. In which markets is it working? So if I want to take a punt on Mumbai's real estate, where do I do that?
Well, if you were to look at where absorption is really coming in at high levels, is that in affordable and mid markets, whether you look at micro markets in Panvel side, in Navi Mumbai side, or areas in Navi Mumbai side like Kharghar, Virar, they've done reasonably well. If you were to look at the Thane side, you've seen Virar doing very well, you've seen Ambernath going up. So there are very affordable and mid markets, which are the only markets where there is genuine end use demand. That's where we're witnessing some sort of absorption, and I think the total absorption numbers are quite good there. Whether you look at Ambernath, Bhiwandi or Nalsapora, absorption levels are from 56% going up to as high as 183%. But if you were to look at Mumbai markets, except Ghatkopar, you really have not much to say, because the prices have just run up so much. And I think the new projects that are coming along, I think the end users or the investors are also pretty scared about their execution capabilities and how badly they've got stuck in their previous projects.
Okay, so Pranay, what do you do about policy? What do you do about the single window clearance system? This is a demand across the country. Maybe things are the worse off here in Mumbai. You've been a part and parcel of the industry for so long. At policy level, things are getting worse. Will they survive despite no policy changes or nothing getting better?
I have a solution for you.
Okay.
And that solution is one simple word called infrastructure.
All right.
All right, we are all seated here. Let's assume that the Trans Harbour Bridge, which has been talked about for so many years now, was complete. Do you know the impact of that? You would have an area 13.5 times the size of Mumbai open up to you within 20 minutes from the center of Mumbai. What would it do to the prices? What would it do to the availability? And this is true of all infrastructure. He talked about the prices here, right? Where the demand is picked up. Why it is picked up? Because of the infrastructure. Everything develops around LBS mark, what is called, because of the connectivity. You are able to take the Eastern Express Highway and just get there.
But probably Mumbai has the worst record when it even comes to infrastructure. I mean, look at the delays in monorail, the metro, everything just takes
I'll tell you,
so long.
As an investor, when we look at investment propositions and we look at Mumbai and we look at NCR, we will take the risk in an NCR if there is a project where there is a proposed road that's going to come up. We will assume that the road will come up, and our experience is that the road does come up.
Okay.
We will never take that assumption in Mumbai.
My goodness.
Never.
But that's a
Until
very
I see the
strong
damn road and you can
statement
drive on it, there is no question of taking that risk.
Kalpesh, I think you should be coming to the NCR market very soon. And I think even the Vadva group has to move beyond Mumbai market. No, really, I mean, look at the infrastructure status. And Pranay has actually said a very critical point. Even for the current city, infrastructure is crumbling. You want new land to open up. You do need infrastructure. And everything that I see, whether it's the Eastern Freeway or the monorail or the metro, it just takes forever. Nothing gets done. All right, so let's then focus on the slum redevelopment issue as well. It's another big issue, Kalpesh. We've looked at the figures. You've said 6,000 acres which can be unlocked. It can actually change the way the city looks and the way the city's people live. But it's not happening, and that's hugely political. Is that the biggest reason?
Correct. Let's look at some of the numbers, right? 6,000 acres is the amount of land under various slums. But the more important number is that according to the 2001 census, there was about 60 lakh people living in slums. That number today realistically is about 75 to 80 lakhs. So that's a huge amount of your citizenry who's living at sort of, in squalid conditions. So the most important focus needs to be bringing these people sort of, into society and above sort of, into better lifestyles. 6,000 acres, once you unlock them, that's more land opened up for open spaces that the city, sorely lacks. It's more land for infrastructure projects, and it leads to about 1 billion square feet of development, right? That's 1.5 million units that will go to rehouse, about the 75 lakh people or so living in slums, and about 3 to 4 lakh units that can actually be sold in the market. The one big reason, the SRA policy, the Slum Rehabilitation Act of 1995, is probably one of the most progressive pieces of policy in spirit.
I'm glad to hear that.
In terms of what it attempts to do, right, which is rehouse these people where they live free of cost. If you look at other cities and other countries like Brazil or China, where they move these people to the outskirts of the city, that doesn't happen in Bombay. So the intent is very, very good.
It's forcibly move them outside. That's
correct.
Right.
The intent is good, but as with everything, approvals and a host of other issues, take an inordinate amount of time. So some numbers: 15 lakh homes under slums. Since in 18 years, there's only 1.5 lakh houses that have actually been delivered. 1.5 million rehabilitated. About 3 lakhs under construction, but there's still 70% that's still not done. The big reason for that is there's something in the policy which, if as a developer, if you've gone in and received consents from people 5 or 10 years ago and haven't moved on the project, there's no penalty for you. You're still in the project.
Right.
So if a capable developer now wants to enter the project, it's impossible for him and it's locked out. So 1.5 million houses, about 10% of that delivered. If I want to enter a slum project right now, nothing's available because people have put their legs into each and every slum project in the city.
Okay.
So that's something that's a huge area if we could address through policy.
But the developers who do have their hands in the redevelopment projects say that it's a big challenge. You just, you first have to get a certain number of percentage people to agree to it. Now look at Dharavi. I mean, you've had the demand from 300 square feet homes to now go up to 500. They just tend to become unreasonable. There's a lot of political motivation here. So how do you deal with something like that?
We as developers, see, there are two legs to a slum rehabilitation. The one is there is a horizontal clearance. There are specialists who do that, who basically ensure that the land is available for developers like us. We enter only after a particular stage. Addressing your question, there are a lot of challenges, as you rightly said. First is right from there is a huge procedure before you get enrolled as the developer to develop something there. Once that is done, clearing the slum, making people move. There is a huge procedure there before Annexure 2 is issued. You need to produce so many certificates and names and so on and so forth, that process itself takes 4 to 5 years. By the time he gets an LOI, that developer is tired. He has exhausted a lot of money and he is now waiting for a developer to walk in and he develops the vertical portions of it. There again, there are huge challenges because there are no funds which will give money to slum rehabilitation projects. They're very selective.
But again, something that does not make sense.
The Goras won't understand it. We will do it.
Exactly.
Very selectively.
Okay.
It is again very selectively done. So if funds are not available, how will a developer actually go ahead? Because you will get bank funding only after it becomes bankable in the sense that all the redevelopment houses are already done. But by that time, I don't need funds.
But even then, I think, yes.
The key, Manisha, is that in a slum rehabilitation, the land ownership does not come to the developer until he actually finishes the rehab portion. So there is nothing that the developer can actually mortgage to raise financing against, even for constructing the rehabilitation portion. So effectively, the entire slum rehabilitation is an equity investment decision, where again, when you're dealing with multitudes of slum owners and multitudes of approvals, the risk levels are phenomenal.
But even then, Pranay, it is a mouth-watering market. It's not the developers aren't eyeing it, and it's not the developers aren't getting into it. People are playing that big and long risk because land is just so scarce.
there are people who are highly successful in doing this. I wouldn't like to take names, but this particular developer has rehoused 18,000 families without force, without twisting the arms. Because what do the slum dwellers want? They only want a roof over their head in a guaranteed fashion, in an assured fashion. Once you are able to do that and you have a track record to do that, they're willing to sign off. The 70% becomes 90% without a problem. They're willing to sign off because all that they want is a place to live.
So,
let me tell you, take 2 more minutes to tell you how this guy is operating. For every 100 slums that he is handling, he's got a relationship manager who's supposed to know everything about those 100 families. The background, children, which school they go to, everything. I mean, he showed me on a computer that if somebody has 2 wives, it's there on the I mean, to that amount of detail he has got. But he is very successful because he has been able to rehouse people, and today he is able to sell his slum redevelopment projects at a huge premium.
Okay, so it is possible. So I think we're going to come back in just a moment and understand whether the risks are really stacked against the developer or there are things which are missing from the developer's end on why slum redevelopment hasn't been very successful in a city like Mumbai where it is a crying need. Now, you're watching Mumbai's Real Estate, the good, the bad, the ugly. Mumbai, the financial and commercial capital of India and of course the most populous city of the country, is also facing a big challenge in trying to rehabilitate and redevelop its slum areas. The real number today is close to 7.5 million people living in the slums of Mumbai. So, as you just said, Pranay, that it is possible. Omkar Realtors have done it. They have rehabilitated, redeveloped a slum area. Why then would we be shy of, financing more such projects?
It's not that we don't do financing of those projects. It's just the complexity of each of these transactions and the size of these transactions. There are slums which run into, as he mentioned, if you just take the Dharavi, it's 5,000 acres, but there are slums which run into hundreds of acres as well. And oftentimes the underlying land ownership is itself not clear. It may be occupied by slums, but when you go in there, for example, one of the investments by
So I think what we're saying here is that this is something which requires for you to go beyond the regular written down business rules and business practices. It's something, Kalpesh, that you need to do with your heart, with some passion, with some commitment. It can't be on Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
It is development financing, so profit should not be a motive.
Profit should not be a motive.
So I don't think that works for these guys.
It cannot.
That doesn't work for any of us.
Nothing in the world will work without profit. So I think what we need to understand here is that can it be done with a heart and also profits can be made on it. I mean, in a city like Mumbai, it should be possible.
Of course. Look, absolutely. As Pranay said, there's all these people, they want one thing, which is, guarantee that they will get a new house. Once they hand over the keys to their hut to you and move away, they need to be able to trust you that you will actually give them the new house that you promised. And that's all they really want. So to the guys who've been unscrupulous in this business, they might have been able to do 1 project, 2 projects, but word very, very quickly spreads. These communities across slums are very, very strong, and word quickly spreads whether you've done a good job, whether you've done a bad job. So, I think that getting into and convincing the slum dwellers is not the issue. The issue is there are so many other people who've gotten into each slum 5 or 10 years before you, and negotiating with them and buying over these projects from them is an extremely complex process. And even after you've gotten in, it takes 4 to 5 years. The process of gathering consents, showing it to the government coming and verifying each consent individually, it takes 4 to 5 years. And there's a lot of inherent uncertainty to that in terms of how long it will take, right? When we take on slum projects, we'll take on 5 or 6 at a time with the hope that 1 or 2 will clear out in a year or 2, right? We're not quite sure where, which of the 2 will clear out first, how long the other 4 will take. So it's a portfolio approach, which is why for investors, it's very difficult to be able to pick that one project out of the 5 or 6 I'm doing and figuring out, where they'll put their money. So it's an inherently uncertain business. It is a win-win strategy for all involved. I think some policy intervention in terms of speeding up these things and dealing with non-performing developers who haven't been able to do anything on these slums that they've parked themselves in, therein lies the answer.
Okay, so it seems to be that it's again going to be a very long drawn process. It's not only just Mumbai. I think slum redevelopment across India is a huge challenge because there are social issues, emotional issues, political vested interest, all of those involved. Okay, so we're going to just last closing comment from you, other than that single window clearance and let's say faster approvals, which I think is a crying need and the single biggest thing that developers want. If you just wanted another on your wish list for the Mumbai's real estate market, what would that be?
We are very, very positive about the Mumbai real estate and very, very bullish about certain micro markets like Bandrakula complex and Chembur, Ghatkopar and Panvel. One wish that I want today is the international airport.
Navi Mumbai.
The Navi Mumbai International
so
Airport.
difficult.
Which seems to be so difficult.
It made headlines today.
That the seat of highest position says that I can't put a date to this.
Yeah.
I can't put a date to one of the most prestigious development. So, to answer your question, that's what I want. I want someone to take accountability and say 2000X, whatever date that may be, the airport is up and running with all the infrastructure that it needs. And we need to perform. It's high time. Last week I was in GRI Singapore and out of some of the meetings I just had to walk out because they look at India as if be away.
Be away. That's what's scaring me, Pranay. So it's not just overall the India story has lost its shine. I mean, if you just look at the latest research and these findings that most people have put India's, and this transition has happened over 2 years. We were right at the top of an the investors' mind space and the monies, and we are now almost at the bottom.
Two things have happened. Because back home, the situation has changed for them. And the liquidity which they had, is no longer there. So they are even more cautious. And by now, as Srini will tell me, you're 10 years behind you of the FIIs coming in, the foreign money coming in. And there are horror stories.
Yeah.
Because of that, people are even more careful about investing money.
Okay.
People have got carried away in initial period, and those horror stories spread faster than the success stories. That is what's happened.
So, would you continue to expand your real estate fund is my next question at the end of a discussion like that.
Well, we happen to be one of the few who have done a reasonably decent job.
Yeah.
And we are seeing some traction with very, very select investors. So it's not a widespread, investor pool which is looking to invest in India. But obviously we have spoiled our copybook as a nation. Variety of factors, whether it is GAR, whether it is taxation, retrospective tax. I mean, there has been a series of bad news that has come in. But coming back to the specific wish list with regard to Mumbai, I wish Mumbai would have its own government so that we could have clear-cut policies, quicker decision making, somebody who has a stake in putting the infrastructure in this city, creating the land supply, and really addressing the needs of that 60 lakh people who are living in slums. Don't forget, some of these slums trade at prices which at which you can actually buy a 2 BHK in any city other than Delhi and Mumbai. Let me tell you, the cost of a slum here, you can buy a 2 BHK in a good location in Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore and various other places. And you can correct that. Capital is available.
All right, on that note, so we do have a wish list here from everybody. Samir, we couldn't toss back to you, but your data, of course, was very, very relevant today. Thank you very much for joining in, Pranay, Srini, Kalpesh and Srini. Pleasure to have you, gentlemen. Mumbai's real estate market, we can't stop talking about it. We just have to keep bringing it up on the property show because it is one of the most important realty markets of the country. And fingers crossed, hopefully after the 2014 elections and the state elections at the end of November, we will actually see some changes, some coherence in the government. Maybe it's wishing for too much or a lot, but then we do live in hope for things to get better. Goodbye and thank you so much for watching.